Welcome in, everybody, to a Thursday edition of Birds 365. Moving right along, Johnny Mac. Already Thursday. Week has gone by quick. We are, 11 days or 12 days out? 12 days out from the Eagles reporting to training camp. 57 days away from the opener. What do we got? Let me see what I got. 21 days away, Johnny Mac, from the open practice for the Eagles fans to get down there and watch a practice.
The one and only.
Yeah, the one
at
and
the
only
store spot.
I wonder if any of our viewers are heading down there for that practice. If you guys are heading down to the Eagles practice, definitely drop that in the chat, and I will give you a little bit of a shout out. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Thursday morning, man?
Doing well. Yeah. Marching along, getting
Cold
closer.
clearing up. You sound fresh, John.
No, not there yet. Not 100%, but getting closer. That's all you can hope. Hopefully by the time training camp rolls around. But yeah, incrementally better. Every once in a while, you'll get the coughing fit, though. It's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, I hear you. Hopefully you're feeling fully better as we get closer and closer to training camp. I want to welcome everybody in this morning. James, already a good crowd here in the first couple of minutes of the show. Jeff Martin, James Carver, Eduardo, Twiz the Jigga, Jason A-Team, CZ, South Jersey D, Charles, Jeff Martin. What's up, everybody? Appreciate every one of you guys for being here. We appreciate, as always, your viewership all through July. I know this is the dog days of summer, but like I said, we are 12 days away from the dog days being behind us. So thank you all for being here. Johnny Mac, let's dive into our first topic today, man. For those who have been watching the show all week, we have been following along on your Sports Illustrated training camp previews. We did quarterbacks yesterday. We did running backs. Now we are at the tight end group. Walk me through it, Johnny Mac. How are you viewing the tight end group as a whole as you preview it heading up to training camp right now?
I think the Eagles got a little bit better by sort of trading out Jack Stoll for CJ Uzomah, a veteran player, 10-year veteran. So you're always a little bit worried about how much does he have left in the tank. But, I mean, CJ's a proven tight end in this league, proven at the highest level, was tremendous in Cincinnati's run to the Super Bowl. A couple of years ago, got a big contract with the Jets, and that's how things tend to happen. He's more of a blocker, similar from you think about what Jack Stoll was, and I think Jack was underrated. Very good blocker and had capable hands, but obviously was not going to scare anybody in the receiving game. CJ's much better as a receiver, better blocker as well. If he's got gas left in the tank at 31. He's coming off an MCL injury, so you have to worry about that. But the guy knows how to play, so I think he's going to be fine as a backup. You know, the Jets signed him to be a major piece of the offense, and that's a different sort of part of the equation, and that's where Dallas Goedert comes in. And I think Dallas is still right on the cusp of being a top 5 tight end in this league. You got the big three, George Kittle, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews coming off an injury. And then you sort of have that next group, and I think Dallas is firmly in there with TJ Hawkinson, but TJ's coming off a really serious knee injury, so who knows where he's going to be. And Sam Laporta, I think, broke through in Detroit. I think he's really good.
Yeah, he's a great player.
Yeah. I think if there's a guy, Iowa just seems to print tight ends. There's certain schools, you know, and Iowa with tight ends is one of those schools. And yeah, he looks like he's maybe the one that's going to break through to that top group, but Dallas is still really good. So you're very comfortable there. And then for the third tight end, Albert Okwuegbunam is back. Grant Calcaterra is back. E.J. Jenkins is one of those futures guys, one of the most impressives during the spring. Very athletic, very long. You're going to hear a lot of Tyree Jackson-like hype about him, I think, this summer, because he's going to make some plays because of his length, athleticism. I think he's more likely going to be that practice squad tight end. And then they brought in an undrafted kid, McCallan Castles from Tennessee, who's more of a receiving type, and that's just the way the NFL is going. push comes to shove, I think Rant Calcaterra is going to be the third tight end. The coaching staff seems to like him. Hasn't performed much, maybe he does stuff well behind the scenes. With Alberto, it's always about, you look at the guy and you say, well, that's impressive. He's 6'5", he's almost 260, runs a 4.49, and I think everybody gets awed by those physical traits, but doesn't seem to click. Didn't click in Denver, didn't click here, gets chance after chance. And I think if push comes to shove, I think the Eagles are going to lean on Calcaterra, but that's kind of, is it really going to matter? It's only going to matter if somebody gets hurt. I think their top two tight ends are really, really good. And CJ's a long-time starter in this league. And as I said, knows how to play. I think that's a perfect signing for the Eagles as a contender versus, obviously you'd like to go in a different direction, younger body. If you maybe were going downward in the standings or projected to be a rebuilding team. But for the Eagles, I think it's a smart signing. And obviously low cost. If it doesn't work, you just move on. But I like the idea behind it. So all of those, when we talk about those signings, whether it's pedigree scouting, I like to talk about, whether it's veteran guys, you take a shot on. We always go back to 2017 and talk about Patrick Robinson and LeGarrette Blount and Chris Long and all those guys. Seemed like they got them all right. Each individual situation's a little bit different, but with the case of CJ Uzomah, it makes a lot of sense. So I think it's a worthwhile gamble for the Eagles, if you even want to call it a gamble, because you're not going to lose much if you lose the gamble.
All right. Overall, it seems to be Johnny Mac's preview would be an improved room. Johnny Mac, let's talk about Dallas Goedert, the lead guy, obviously, a potential top 5 tight end in the league when he's out there. What do you expect from him this year in terms of, not from him specifically, but more about the offense and Kellen Moore and the changes to the offense? Do you think we featured the tight end group a little bit more this year? Will Dallas Goedert have a chance to, maybe get up to that almost 1,000-yard mark or somewhere in that range? I know it's tough when you got Devontae and you got A.J. Brown, but when I think about Kellen Moore, I think about a guy that's going to try and spread the football around a little bit more, maybe force Jalen Hurts to go to the middle of the field a little bit more. We've talked about, his hesitancy going there. Do you think this offense kind of bodes better for a guy like Dallas Goedert compared to how it's been the last couple of years?
Maybe. I know Dallas is excited about it. And
Yeah,
that's kind of the off season when you look at it on paper. You say, yeah, Kellen's got a history of using the tight end a little bit more, but that involve building around the particular quarterbacks versus the particular offense. So it's kind of a wait and see approach. But yeah, I mean, that's an area that Jalen Hurts needs to get better at. You got a huge target in the middle of the field who gets yards after catch.
Yeah.
It seems foolish not to use him. And that's what I think more of it boils down to. But you got to get Jalen Hurts comfortable with that aspect of the game. And I think in a lot of ways, that's what they were trying to do. You use that word, force him to throw over the middle of the field. I think they were forcing him to throw over the middle of the field in practice, and I have no problem with that because he needs to get better at it. I don't know if you're going to do that when the games start for real,
Right.
unless he, shows incremental improvement, he becomes more comfortable. But I don't like that word force when the games are going. And that'll be more of a sort of feel on each particular week and what's working, what's not working. But bottom line is he's a really good player, and he can help you. So it's not the worst thing to sit there during the week and game plan and say, oh, this team's poor at linebacker and coverage, poor, maybe the strong safety's poor in coverage. And let's take advantage of Dallas Goedert a little bit more this week. he's one of the guys. He's one of the core guys. It's, Nick will tell you, when he first got here was about Devontae and Dallas, and then it become AJ and Devontae and Dallas toggling back and forth. But those are the three guys. And now it's a clear 1, 2, 3. AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert in the passing game. And they're all really good. So kind of pick your poison for opposing defensive coordinators if you do it right.
Yeah, and I think Dallas Goedert's a guy that you want to get involved if you're Kellen Moore, if you're Jalen Hurts. I mean, I think Jalen Hurts, despite him maybe not liking to go to the middle of the field, I think he's smart enough to understand why it would be a productive thing to go to Dallas Goedert. I mean, the one thing that stuck out to me, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, he went from 15 yards per catch, in 2021, Jalen Hurts' first year starting. He was all the way down right at 10 or 10.1 last year, with almost the same amount of receptions. I'd like to see him try and get that number back up a little bit, because that's where, he was a big clutch for Jalen Hurts as his first year starting. I mean, he picked up first downs. He was, kind of a big piece of the offense, if you will, with 800 plus yards of offense. I think Jalen Hurts knows that it would be a positive thing to get him involved in the offense, by doing whatever it takes.
Yeah, I mean, he should know. I think the difference last year when you talk about the yards per catch coming down, one, that 2021 season, I believe it was, that's pretty spectacular for a tight end in the modern era, where everything, there's so many throws underneath and so many quick throws, and to get to that number as a tight end is pretty impressive. So I think you have the natural sort of come down from that. You can't sustain that over a long period of time. So maybe that gets you down to 12.8 where he was in 2022. That's good. That's really good for a tight end. But you don't want to be down at 10 like he was last season. And I think a lot of that was what I just said. They got him the football closer to the line of scrimmage, whether it was quick tight end screens, quick throws, things like that. And then all of a sudden you got to break tackles. So I think part of it is that. I think there's more meat on the bone when it comes to seam routes and trying to get him down the field and trying to take advantage of his athleticism. Whether it's a cornerback covering him, he's got the big body, he can box out, make it a basketball game, or if it's a linebacker, obviously he's going to have the athleticism advantage. And with most strong safeties in this league as well, he's going to have the advantage. So he's a good player, good matchup, and a lot of it is he's never not been a really good player. He's since he's taken over for Zach Ertz, he's been near that top 5 group in tight ends in the NFL the entire time, including last year. The two worries you have is, and I'll throw a third from my own. I do think there's a few too many concentration drops where I think he needs to clean them up. That's lesser though. That the way he plays so physical. He's susceptible to injuries. You've seen that. The stiff arm.
You think he'll try and change that a little bit? Not
No,
fully. I mean, I
no.
want him to be physical, but I think he knows that he can't keep missing games. It will probably cost him money on his next contract. I mean, he's got to be available. I know that you can't legislate it in the NFL, but it has been something in his career. You think he'll try and, make some adjustments to lessen the load on his body?
You never know, but I've talked to him a lot about that over the years, and he knows it, and he knows he got hurt from being physical, and he takes pride in winning Kyle Brandt's Angry Run Award and running over people and being physical against people. And he seems to enjoy it, and he doesn't seem to have any inclination of stopping it. But yeah, as he gets older, maybe he kind of figures out, and sometimes that's a natural evolution. He's probably only got one big time contract coming in his career at this age. He's going to be 30 early next year. And we know the Eagles in 30 years, they were drafting Dallas when Zach Ertz was 28 or 29, creating this succession plan. They haven't started that yet with Dallas, but they might soon. And yeah, he probably should be thinking about that, but I don't think he is. And that's probably good for the Eagles in short term. I mean, he's just a really competitive guy, and he's going to try to be dominant when he's out there. And you hope, but I mean, he's played one full season, and that was his rookie season when he was a part-time player. Obviously, he played all 16 games at the time. And then he's missed a game or two. It hasn't been a ton. He played 15 in 2019, 11 in 2020, which was his low point, 15 in 2021, 12 in 2022 when he broke the bone in his shoulder, and last year he played 14. So it hasn't been a ton.
Right. It's hovering right in that same range.
Yeah. You want him out there. But maybe that's just the modern NFL. It's tough to get guys out there for 17 games and the playoffs.
Absolutely.
The Eagles are typically in the playoffs as well, so you have to factor that in.
Johnny Mac, when we talk about this offense, and rightfully so, we talk so much about AJ and Devontae Smith and how important they are to get into the game because those are your guys. It's like when we talk about Saquon. We don't want to make him a premier passing running back because we have AJ and Devontae. It takes away from your two best players. Do you view Dallas Goedert in a similar light in terms of are there plays or formations being developed around his skill set? Is he one of the guys that you want to get involved in the game, similar to what you would say about we need to get A.J. Brown involved in the game. We need to get Devontae Smith involved in the game. They are our offense. I kind of view Dallas Goedert in that light in some regard. Would you say that's fair or no?
No, I think it's fair, but I also think it's somewhat tempered by the presence of those guys. I mean,
makes sense.
If you go back to 2021, which is Dallas's best season, and it's a season if he didn't get injured, he'd be pushing 1,000 yards. Well, why would he be pushing 1,000 yards? AJ wasn't here.
Right.
So, if AJ or Devontae weren't here, that 59 receptions last year in 14 games, you could, expand that out to 17 if he ever stayed healthy, and you're well into the 60s, maybe close to 70. If you don't have one of those two guys, he's an 80, 90 catch player, and you probably have him up in that discussion, or I'm not speaking about you specifically, but nationally.
Yeah.
Because he'd have the numbers, and that's what it's about. Let's be honest. He's the same player, but he's getting more traffic. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. I mean, and that's why I say, and it's a nebulous standard. I use that word all the time, and I say it about Saquon. It's not about numbers. It's about his impact on the game. Same thing with Dallas. Same thing with Jordan Davis. And I know people get sick of hearing it, but it's true. It doesn't matter. The fantasy football numbers don't matter. They might matter for your fantasy football team, but the Eagles don't care. As long as he's playing at a high level,
right,
he's accepting his role behind AJ and Devontae in the passing game, they're going to be very happy. They want him to stay healthy. They want him to be out there every week. He's going to have games where he spikes because of maybe matchups and things like that. But he's going to be the third option as long as those two guys are here. That's not a bad thing.
No.
Same with Saquon. He's going to run the ball a lot, but in the passing game, it's going to be about, occasional matchups and opportunities and making plays when the plays come to you. And if he's impactful, all's good. And, defensively, excuse me, I talk about Jordan all the time. I mean, he's not supposed to get sacks. He's supposed to make it easier for Jalen Carter to get sacks. And, There are roles on the football field.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that interests me with Goddard and why I think that they're really going to try and get him involved. I do agree though. I mean, he's going to be the number 3 option obviously in the passing game. But the Eagles love the big play, right? They talk so much about the big play on offense and they talk about limiting it on defense. That's basically their entire defensive philosophy is built around limiting the dang big play. Anyway, Dallas Goedert to me possesses that big play potential tight end. Like we talked about CJ Uzomah. He's a guy that knows how to play the position. He doesn't have big play potential like a guy like Dallas Goedert does. Dallas Goedert, he plays the game like a super athletic version of a tight end, almost like wide receiver S with the way he can run. And I think Kellen Moore is going to try and take advantage of that. Not all the time, not every play, not every drive, just in moments in the game where, Devontae and AJ are cooking and the the attention is on them. Boom, it might free up an opportunity for a big play to Dallas Goedert. I think for that reason, they're going to try and get him involved in the offense.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, on certain weeks you might have a matchup you like, and even down to certain plays, and it's a big, in theory, as I said, if you do it right, there's very few teams that can point to their top 3 options in the passing game and come up with AJ, Devontae, and Dallas Goedert. That's pretty good. So that creates a lot of stress on the defense if you do it correctly. And you're right about that. I mean, Dallas in college at South Dakota State, I mean, he barely blocked. He was essentially a receiver. So when he got here, the Eagles were pleasantly surprised because he took the blocking. He's such a big guy, such a physical guy, such a strong guy. Never asked really to do it at South Dakota State because he was too dominant as a receiver. And he just took to it naturally. So he's one of the few two-way tight ends, so to speak, left. Like if you talk about best tight ends, I used to have this discussion with Jody all the time. Most people start with Travis Kelce, first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
No question about all of it. But if you talk to people around the league, the best tight end, the best overall tight end is George Kittle and has been for a number of years because George can block as well. And he's a really good blocker. And Travis is a receiver. He's not even a tight end. They're essentially playing different positions. And Travis is great at what he does. But, if you want to block, if you want to seal the edge, if you want to try to hold up on pass protection, you're not going to use Travis Kelce a lot to do that. You can do it more with players like Kittle and Goddard. And there are very few of those guys, but he's just a really, really good player. And a couple of years ago, when Ed and I did our list that we're currently doing top 25 Eagles, I had him number 1 coming off that 2021 season. That's how good he is.
Yeah.
I probably jumped the gun, probably went too high, but he's a really, really good player. I mean, really good. But, the numbers are never going to be there. If you want 100 catches like Zach used to have, remember, Zach Ertz was the number 1 option.
Yeah, I mean, look,
the
that was
offense
when we
all
had
the time.
yeah, I mean,
Too much Ertz, blah, 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 all that
Travis
kind of
Fulgham and
hashtag.
all sorts of dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Dallas is not in that position. Could he do it if he stayed healthy? Yes, if he's the number 1 option. But if he's the number 1 option, you're also far more limited offensively. And that's any tight end, including Travis. Even Kansas City, with all their success, remember, they were far more explosive when Tyreek was there than they are now. Understandably so, but that's just the reality of it.
John, last question on Dallas Goedert. I want you to think about your last 5 years covering this team. As long as Dallas Goedert's been here, he was obviously a guy who was here with Carson Wentz a little bit. What's his connection like, at least from your perspective, just from what you've seen, practices, scrimmages? How is his connection with Jalen Hurts? What's the chemistry like between Dallas Goedert and Jalen Hurts? And have they shown a strong connection during practices, scrimmages, just when you're down there? Do they seem like have a good connection?
Yeah, I don't. They were on the different page. What game was that? I don't know. The chemistry between, Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown are like best friends.
That's what I'm saying. Like their chemistry is.
Yeah, but people complain about their chemistry. Oh, are they fighting? Are they, because AJ's yelling
But the
on the
numbers
sideline?
there, you can complain about it in the moment, and you can see something on your TV screen that gives you a bit of a concern. But when you step back and you look at the numbers and you look at the production and you look at what AJ Brown's done for this football team the last 2 years, I think you know the truth.
Well, I'm just
Not
saying
you.
from
I'm
the
just saying people in
standpoint
general. Yeah.
from the standpoint of people. That's why I don't like these chemistry talks, or they have no issues, they have no problems. Dallas is firmly behind the quarterback and vice versa. um but because he doesn't get the football enough, people are going to talk about it. But he doesn't get the football enough because he's the third option, and he's the third option because the two options in front of him are really, really good. And if he was the first option, he'd put up better numbers and people wouldn't like it because they wouldn't be as good at an offense. So that's kind of how I describe it. So look, everybody can't catch 110 balls. Doesn't work that way unless you're constantly on the field for 15 play drives. And that's not even good, because then you're lacking explosive plays and you're going down the field meticulously. There's only a certain amount of targets and receptions to go around. So everybody wants the ball in AJ's hands and Devontae's hands and Dallas's hands and Saquon's hands, and a better third receiver. I can picture Doug Peterson, going, if I'm drawing up plays for the sixth option, you should fire me. I go back to my NBA analogy. Here locally in Philadelphia, it's Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. Are you going away from them on a particular day? Should you flip it in the playoffs? Sure. But you got your main guys, and everything feeds off AJ and Devontae. And that's just the way it's going to be as long as they're here. And that's the way it should be. Be crazy.
Yeah, I didn't. When I asked the question, I don't mean it in any sort of sinister way. I mean it in general. Like, are they on the same page? Are they good? I mean, it matters when you're throwing the ball to somebody. It matters, I would say. And like I said, I didn't mean it in a sinister way, that insinuating that they're not on the same page. I was just asking what
I don't think anybody was on the same page late last season. No, I Dallas has always spoken very highly of Jalen and vice versa. So and Dallas is not the type to complain. And I don't think you've ever heard him complain publicly. I could be wrong. People can correct me in the chat if they want. I don't recall him ever complaining.
Yeah, no, I don't either.
It's just not that type of guy. So I don't think you have to worry about that.
Johnny Mac, let's continue the tight end preview. We're doing our tight end preview for everybody just checking in. Appreciate you guys checking in. Johnny Mac has been chronicling, or at least doing articles the last couple days as we lead up to training camp previews from John McMullen. He did the quarterbacks. We did the running backs yesterday. Today we were doing the tight end, so we just dove deep into Dallas Goedert. Good segment there. Johnny Mac, let's talk about, I know you did it at the open. You talked about kind of the tight end room as a whole. But CJ Uzomah now seems like he's going to be the tight end number 2 this year. What kind of skill set does CJ have? I know he's kind of been a starter in the league. He has a lot more game experience than previous tight end 2s we've had in the past. What kind of skill set does he bring to this team?
Big dude. 6'6", 270. For almost, you got to go back and almost an old school generational extra offensive lineman type. He's so big, but he can also catch the football, has very good hands. He had I mentioned his run to Super Bowl, whatever that was, with Cincinnati. He had 14 or 15 catches during that run. Was making big plays, first downs, in the run to the Super Bowl. So he's done it at high level. That run probably got him his big contract with the Jets. And that the Jets are typically making bad decisions, bad organization. I think they've been a lot better with Joe Douglas, but anytime you sign a tight end for big money, what do people expect? They expect receptions,
Production,
and
yep.
that's not his ballywick. So he was a disappointment with the Jets from that perspective, um, which is kind of unfair, and hurt his knee at the end of last year, and they cut him, and the Eagles signed him. I mean, these two players are not in the realm that, I mean, with all due respect to Jack Stoll, he's not even close to CJ Uzomah. If CJ's got anything left. Now, he's 30, he's post 30. We know this league. Um, I haven't seen him enough to say, oh, he's fine. It very well, but if it's the CJ Uzomah of Cincinnati, again, they're not even close. It's a huge upgrade. And it also gives you, we talk about, and Nick mentioned this a little bit. It's not where the Eagles want to be, but when he was asked about the third receiver, he started talking about 21 personnel, which is two running backs. He's not going to use that a lot because the redundancy of Saquon Barkley and Kenny Gainwell from a skill set standpoint, you're not going to use Saquon as a blocker.
Right.
And you're certainly, he's a very good pass protector, blitz picker upper for a running back. But if you're playing 21, you're going to have to do some different things. You're going to have to chip, and they don't want to waste them in that reality. So that's kind of silly, other than an occasional curveball. But when you talk about 12 personnel, two tight ends, if CJ's healthy and ready to go and the same guy he's been, they're arguably better with 12 personnel than 11 personnel because CJ's a better player than Paris Campbell. But it changes the way you want to run your offense. It makes you, obviously, you don't have as much speed on the field. You can't create the same kind of separation. So you have to play the game a little bit differently in spacing and all that kind of stuff. So the Eagles don't want to play that way. They want to play 11 personnel like everybody does basically in this league. But if it comes down to it, you need to win a football game. They're probably better. Their best formational, just from a talent standpoint, is probably going to be 12 if CJ's CJ. If he's the Cincinnati CJ.
Good stuff. Got some better depth this year. Johnny Mac, before we take our time out, just want to give you a chance to put any finishing touches on what you think is the tight end preview for the training camp. I know Calcaterra's out there. Anything we're missing when we talk about this tight end room as we prepare for training camp?
Yeah, it might be a year early, but EJ Jenkins is going to be one of those guys, sort of an oversized receiver. And that's what it seems like so many tight ends are becoming. And he was really impressive in the spring. Now, it's with Tanner McKee in the third string. And we've been through this with Tyree Jackson. Not saying it's going to work out, but I do think the Eagles are going to want to get him some reps with the second team to see if he can sort of level up, so to speak. He's just gifted athletically, and he's 6'6", 6'7". He can run. He's athletic. Name to keep an eye on. He's got a bigger upside than Grant Calcaterra or Albert Okwegbanon, who's also athletic and big, but doesn't seem to translate on the field. EJ was out there making catches, going
Yeah, I was
up
going to
high.
say there were some things coming out of minicamp that he was having some big plays.
Yeah, he was high point in the football. He was going over D-backs. Um, you know, he it's a good developmental prospect, so it's a name to keep an eye on. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be impactful this year. I think it's a longer term project. But if you think about their practice squad tight ends recently, our old friend Noah Tungiai, this guy's way more athletic, way more of an upside. So he's going to be around on the practice squad, and he's just put an asterisk next to that name because he's got some
How old is
upside.
EJ?
Oh, let me see. I got it in front of me. He's only 25.
Okay, so he's got some. Yeah, he's a guy
Yeah,
that can develop. Yeah,
he only broke in last year as an undrafted free agent with the Jets. And then he was here for a small period on the practice squad. Then he went to Las Vegas on their practice squad, and then the Eagles signed him back. Yeah, I mean, he was really impressive in the spring, and that's when guys like that are going to be impressive because he's an athlete. He's big. They're in pajamas, as Bobby King will say, but he made the most of it. Like he was better than everybody else in pajamas on the second, third team. So that's something.
yeah, good stuff, Johnny Mac. Well, one question I want to go to in our chat as we wrap up the tight end preview. JM, because this has been talked about since he's been drafted. JM says, any chance that Johnny Wilson at tight end, or is that bunkum?
No, zero.
Bunkum.
Now, I'm not saying down the road, but the Eagles have been very, very concrete. Howie said it on the record. Nick said it on the record. He's a receiver. They think he's a receiver. They think he's athletic enough to play outside. They think he runs routes well enough to play outside. Now, if he fails and 3 years down the road, they tell him to gain 15 pounds, that's probably a bad indication. He's probably going to be out the door. But, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside tried to move to tight end, for those who don't know, after he left Philadelphia. So you never say never down the road. But as of right now, the Eagles, both in front of the cameras and behind the cameras, have stressed he is a wide receiver, period. And
Plays like one too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. Johnny Mac, one other question. Sorry, just popped into my head, though. Where are we on Dallas Goedert's contract situation?
I'd have to look. He's got a couple years left.
I mean, it says he's got 1 year left, and then there's a potential out, and then he has 2025. So technically, he's under contract for the next 2 years. I just didn't know the dead cap drops from 22 to 11.
The problem you're going to have is his guaranteed money is going to be up. So they're going to have to rework something pretty quickly. Obviously, you got the typical void years on Dallas's contract. So that's what the Eagles do. They typically so he's under contract through 2025. Then they have 4 voidable years, and typically that's after this season is when they'll adjust the contract, kick another void year to help with the cap space. But once the guaranteed money is up, and the guaranteed money is up this season, then the player's not going to be happy. So you're going to have to do something with Dallas Goedert next season, even though he's under contract. And look, if he has a bad season and he's 30 in Philadelphia, that might be it for him. But I don't expect him to have a bad season.
I don't either. Let's move into our commercial break. I want to thank everybody for being here. A great crowd this morning already on Birds 365. We appreciate each and every one of you guys for being here. Make sure you drop a like on the show. We appreciate all of your viewership, as always, all through the offseason. Just 12 days away, everybody, from the Eagles reporting for training camp. So we will have a lot more to talk about, not a lot less content to create out of thin air, and we will be off and running to the season. Let's get to our first commercial break. I got a couple good questions for Johnny Mac. A couple regarding Tyler Steen. So we'll talk about Tyler Steen next. And then we have Ed Kratz in hour 2. And if we have time, I got one other thing I want to talk to John. Underrated Eagles players entering the season. If you guys are in the chat, you want to participate, drop some of your underrated Eagles players that you think will have a good season this year that people are not talking about. Underrated Eagles players coming into the 2024 year. We'll do all that next on Birds 365. Stay tuned, everybody.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.